about my podcast, and everybody's going to join in on this conversation with us. So it's going to
I
be,
love that.
is that
Yeah.
I've sort of realized that the best conversations happen when we're just sitting here talking. I may have some questions for you to start, but like almost as if like somebody's listening in on the conversation. So I'm kind of changing the podcast to be like, let's just start talking. And then
I
I'll
love
do an
that.
intro afterwards, being like, this is why I wanted you to eavesdrop on our conversation. Come on, come listen in.
Right.
And because I feel like that's sort of my vibe, is just I'm just so chill. I can't do like the proper intro and the proper outro. And it's like, oh. So
Right.
this is
Same.
experiment day where we're gonna do that.
Yay, I'm the experiment.
You
I'll take it. I'll take it.
you
And I
are
did
the
wear all my
experiment.
color for you.
And
So
I
when I put this
appreciate
on,
that.
I was like, it was for you.
I love it. We're both super colorful right now. Okay, so
I love it.
I was the reason I invited you to the podcast. I really wanted to have you on is because when we were talking a while back, because we've talked a few times and we had to reschedule a bunch of times, which I think is a testament to both of our ADHD. Was that you mentioned that you were neurodivergent, and there's so much of your business that is geared in that direction, and that really excited me because I think that we're entering into a new era of like where people aren't afraid to own their neurodivergence and like move forward. So
Right.
I'm curious to know, did you always know you were neurodivergent, or is this something that, because you look about we're about the same age,
Yep.
so I'm
Yeah, we're at the
assuming,
same age. Yep.
yeah, so I'm assuming that you didn't like when you were younger, they didn't even think that neurodivergence was even a thing. So how did that manifest for you?
Well, it was actually funny. So like in women, it presents itself different than in men
Mhm.
genetically, right? And so my brothers were diagnosed with, one is bipolar and one has ADHD. And they were like super hyper and all over the place. Where me, I was my brain was always all over the place, but I was always present in the moment, and I could always be calm. I could be hyper focused, but my brain was always scattered and I could never stay organized. I was kind of like always all over the place. And it wasn't until college that I went and I talked to my doctor. I'm like, something's wrong with my brain. And it was, explained to me like, no, you have ADHD. And they tried giving me medication and it made me feel even crazier. And then later on down the line, I got diagnosed with a heart condition and I was told again, like, here, you can go on these medications, but I actually can't use the medications because of my heart. So it was like kind of like this catch 22, like, what do I do? There's a lot of alternatives like CBD and THC if that's something that, I want to take and it works for, that would help me more so than, than what I take. But my cardiologist has been super amazing at helping me with trying to figure that out, which is funny because he's not my actual doctor. So it's amazing how over time I kind of figured out what was kind of going on in my brain, and the more I understood it, the more I was able to kind of work with it a little bit, right?
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I was older. I didn't really understand it probably till I was in my mid 30s. So I
Yeah.
mean, maybe only 5 years ago.
Yeah, that's what
So
I'm feeling. It's like for me, it was only in the last like 3 years or 4 years. It hasn't been very long at all. So, when we talk though, like about your life and the things that you've done in your life, you've accomplished like a lot, right? And so I'm curious to know, because when I was in school, for example, I failed every class. I did so poorly in school, and people didn't really think I was gonna. They were like, "Oh, she's such a special child," but there's this. If only she'd apply herself. So I really had this feeling that people didn't really think I was going to amount to much or be able to be very successful because I couldn't cope in the structure that existed there. So as you know, with ADHD and neurodivergence, we have to find our own way. So I'm curious, how did you channel your energy? Like, how did you manage to take what some people considered or would consider to be like a deficit, or maybe it didn't manifest because you said you could focus really well? How did it manifest for you any negative ways, and how did you come up with your compensation techniques for that?
so mental breakdowns. So,
Yes.
about 10 maybe 12 years ago, I became a yoga instructor because I loved going to, so this is how this started. So I would go to yoga classes and my brain was like always all over the place and it was so overwhelming. I'm like, I need something to calm me down. And I understand the concepts, but like it's not calming me down. I actually started teaching yoga because the listening to myself talk was able to get out of my head. So I actually would teach from a place of a person that needed to hear what I was saying so they would get out of their head. So it was take a deep breath in, exhale out, arms up over your head, touch your toes. So if you were listening to everything that I'm saying, you stop thinking about the things that were in your head. Because as a person like us, we're in our heads 24/7, even when we don't want to be. It was the only way that I could stay focused was listening to directions, and I was doing it for myself. So that started to help me. And I was like teaching this to all of these people, but then like I would leave the class and everyone would be like, "Oh my goodness, like I'm doing all of these new techniques and it's working." And I wasn't doing any of it. I was preaching it while I was teaching, and I was doing great while I was teaching, but then I'd come home and it'd be like pure chaos.
Mm.
And it was trying to balance, multiple children that were young. One of them, my middle son, has Tourette's, so I'm dealing with that as well. And it was learning through him and learning through the patients that like we've had to give him. They were trying to diagnose him with ADHD, and I'm like, he doesn't have ADHD, like that's not what it was. So it was like this really cool like learning experience for me, because I started to understand more about myself, because we're going to all the doctors for my son, even though I was already diagnosed. I didn't quite wrap my mind around all of the different ways that we learn and how different we are.
Mm.
So, for yourself, like you had a hard time with structure, where structure was the only thing that kept me in place, right? So it's funny how we're so similar, because like every time we talk, and that's what connected us. When you talked at the conference, it was just like, oh my goodness, like we need to have a conversation. And I feel like every time we talk, I just get like super hyped up because
Me
we
too.
understand how we think, right? And I love that so much, because not everybody understands like, oh, they're like, Jen's crazy. I'm like, I am so crazy, but I understand my crazy. So I'm able to kind of, work with it a little bit better these days.
Yeah.
And it was COVID really helped, because I was pregnant and I was taking on way too many things, which I do all the time. Like I'm a yes girl 100%. It's like, you want to do that? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh my
Because
God,
I
me
was always
too.
trying, right? I was trying to
Yes.
please people. But you know what COVID taught me? COVID taught me to stop pleasing other people. It taught me to do the things that I want to do, put my energy where I feel like it could be the best utilized. And when I started changing my thought process, I also started changing how I started laying out my days. And I did this in a workshop the other day, because I teach scheduling and time management, which is so fucking funny, because I was the complete opposite of anybody who could schedule or
I
work with
know.
time management. Like I was like the opposite of it. I was just like ding, 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 starting my day at 5 o'clock in the morning, ending at 10 o'clock at night. Like I had no boundaries. I wasn't scheduling my things. I was missing appointments left and right. It's like when
Hmm.
you get the call from the doctor going, "You've missed 2 calls. You got to find a new primary care." I'm just like, fuck. So I was that person, and it started getting so overwhelming. And as I started growing my businesses, and we've talked about this, I own multiple businesses. I'm like, how am I going to do it? And a good friend of mine, we were on a call, and she goes, "I want you to do me a favor. Just take a timer, set it for 5 minutes, put your phone down, and just work on your emails for 5 minutes and see if that makes you feel better." And that was the only advice she gave me. There was nothing else after that. It was no additional prompts, no additional conversations. I think we've had lunch twice, 2 or 3 times in person since it's happened. But I give her all of the credit, because she goes, "Just set the timer. Give yourself 5 minutes, then get up and go do something else." And for me now, it's like 15 to 30-minute increments. I can actually
Hmm.
stay focused. But everything I do is put the phone down for 30 minutes, work on my email, my another, schedule time, work on this, work on this.
Hmm.
And when I started becoming more and more focused and intentional with my time, the stress and anxiety started to wear away. I used to be super anxious all the time. Like, because I'm just like, oh my goodness, am I getting everything done? I'm going to forget everything. So I started to-do lists, and I started, like things that are all attached to my phone. So it's like at 10 o'clock at night when I'm going to bed and I'm like, oh, fuck, I got to do something. I can write it down and I
Yeah.
can go to sleep. Right. So finding the processes and systems that worked best for me. And now I'm able to teach them to other people. So I think I would have never thought that that would be something that I'd teach other people, when everyone's just like, what is it you do? And I was like, well, actually, I do all of these things, but this is what I specialize in. So it's a really funny thing to me.
It is weird. I mean, for myself as well. You said, actually, you said so many things that I was like, oh my God, I want to talk about that and that and that, that. So let's go back to the very first, or the earlier, when you said, I kind of had to understand my crazy. I think that was really powerful. So I want to spend a little bit of time on that, because I think that for me, that's also where I started to, see true progress, was when I stopped trying
Yeah.
to, I think, do you feel, and so I'm going to throw something out there in terms of how I thought, and I'm curious to know what you think about it. So I thought, prior to me sort of like understanding my crazy, I was terrified. I don't know what I was afraid of, but I was afraid of something that didn't allow me to look at what was wrong with me. Right. Like, and I use that
Right.
word then. I don't think there's anything wrong with me now. I just think I have a different way of
Right.
viewing the world. But I was terrified to stop and look. And because I was terrified to stop and look, I couldn't understand my crazy and I couldn't figure out those systems. And do you feel like, I mean, did you feel that kind of fear too, to stop and look? And if you did, like, do you
Oh,
know what you were
absolutely.
afraid of?
Yeah, and I feel like we had that fear of one, it's like that self-assessment and self-judgment. And I'm a kid of trauma. So I have a really like traumatic background as far as like growing up. So I worked to get myself to a point where I created this, not created, but like kind of stepped into the person that I am. And I love everything about the person that I am. And I was so worried 5 years ago what other people may think if I
Mhm.
added that title to the person that I am. So everyone's like outside looking in, oh, look at Jen, she's so great. But then now I'm just like, oh yeah, but I'm also crazy. And I have ADHD. And like I mean, I use the word crazy, but let's be completely honest. Like I know like I'm definitely, there's good crazy and there's bad crazy. I like to define it as good crazy. And I don't look at that
We
word
know
as
that
like a
here. Good
bad
crazy.
word, right? Like it's some people like look at it as like a bad thing, and for me it's like I understand it, like I understand why my head is all over the place all of the time, and I know how to kind of step back and assess and feel comfortable in it. And the more and more I talk about it, and because I was, when I first started talking about it, I felt like, oh, I'm saying it all the time. And I'm like, people are going to get like overwhelmed, or they're just going to be like, oh, well, this is all she talks about. But I talk about it so much because I want other people to know, like, I know how your head thinks. Other people think like we're all different and unique and have different abilities. Like it's not a disability, it's a different ability. How can we work with it to make us be the best version of ourselves and then teach other people to do the same?
Mhm.
Because I think if we understand how our brains work, and again, it's why I teach the time management and the boundaries, because the more we learn about ourselves and keep ourselves on a schedule and have the boundaries for ourselves, we're able to create this more organized chaos.
Absolutely. And it's funny you said organized chaos. My sister calls it controlled chaos.
I
She
love that.
also calls it planned panic. But
Clan panic. I like that.
it's, and I, because you said you would never have been the person, like I didn't thrive under schedule structure when I was younger, and the way I learn is very loosey goosey. But in terms of like my day-to-day life, for so long I wanted to just be able to do anything whenever I wanted, and that, as it turned out, was like I needed some sort of a structure. And it
Right.
is, once I put the structure around myself, and again, like I think structure has so many different ways. Like it doesn't have to be in 5 minutes you do this, in 5 minutes you do this. Like structure is,
Absolutely not.
you can adapt it to what works for you. My sister, I bring her up too, because once I figured it out, right, for myself, because she also has ADHD. So I figured it out for myself and I got this right. She kept saying to me, my life is so crazy, blah, blah, same, same, same. And I said to her, I said, Syra, you need a schedule. And she fought me on it like so hard. And you know how sisters can be, but like they'll argue about it. It's not like a client where you
Hmm.
actually have to, it's more like, the hell, just do the freaking schedule. And that kind of like, because for some reason I can't actually have a conversation with her the way I would with a client. It's the only way I know how to do it is to
Yeah, of course.
tell her what to do.
I kind of would talk like that to some clients, but depending on who they are.
But they
Kidding,
just,
not kidding.
because it's like you want the freedom, but I think what we didn't realize was the freedom comes with the structure. Like once you create the structure,
Yes.
releasing it, like you mentioned, the anxiety goes away, right?
Right.
And that anxiety going away is the freedom, right? Because the anxiety is the prison.
Right. It totally is. And the first step of that, and at the beginning of all of the workshops that I teach, the first thing I talk about is boundaries.
Yeah.
It is right out the gate boundaries, because someone like ourselves, we're yes people. And, a yes person is, well, I really don't want to talk to anyone before 8 o'clock, but that's the only time that they could talk. So I guess I'm going to do it. And I'm not going to have my coffee. So I'm not going to be at the top of my game. And now your brain is like going like 10 miles an hour, 10 miles, 100 miles an hour, because normally you wake up at a certain time, but you had to change your thought process. You're not going to sleep the night before because you're changing your boundaries. And it's like this cascade effect of those are the things that happen in my head. So I'm just throwing that out there.
Why were you
And
listening in on my phone call yesterday?
yeah,
Because I'm just
see,
saying, like, you were listening in
did
on
you
my phone
really?
call. Yeah, absolutely. I literally had this I swear to God, the words, I don't drink coffee, I drink Dr. Pepper. But other than that, that was the
That's
exact
amazing.
phone call I had with somebody yesterday morning, because somebody I needed an appointment with didn't have a like word for bloody word.
That is
I would
amazing. I
fucking
told
kill
you
you.
we're connect. I told you every time we talk, and anyone who's listening, again, the word crazy is going to come out. since the day I met you, I'm like, there is some type of crazy connection. Like the
I
day that we
know.
got on the phone call and you were just like, I'm a hot mess. And I was like, and I'm here for it. And it was one of the best conversations that we had. And, but yeah, but that's like how our brains think, right? And then we overreact and we overthink, and then we can't control it because it turns into the snowball. And then it's like, but then now I can't work because I can't think and I'm stressed out.
Yeah.
And that's how my day to day was happening, where now I put myself on like a schedule. Like I don't talk to someone before 9 a.m. unless it's an like, and we all make exceptions,
Yeah.
but it's not an occasional, like it's not all the time. Like if it's someone from my kid's school, or it's like a client that is in another country, because sometimes for me, like I'll talk to people like completely on the opposite side of the
Hmm.
world. So my times I'll bend a little bit, but I did that last week. I did a it was a Facebook Live with a friend of mine, and she's fantastic. Like she helps with like kids, that she's like a parenting specialist. And I'm like, my kid's crazy. And he's like yelling and screaming, like he's going through that phase of the 2.5-year-old time. And so this live was fantastic. It was so much great information, but it was at 7 o'clock at night. And 7 o'clock at night for me, my kids know that after 5, it's their time. They know the time. My son,
Hmm.
who has Tourette's, is like, it's 7, mama, it's 7, mama, it's 7, mama. And I'm like, I know, honey. Like he knows that that time is his time. So when I bend it, I have to always remember that there's a lot of repercussions in the house, because my kids are so set on my schedule,
Hmm.
that I'm so intentional with my time, that while I don't mind doing it, when I got off, I did a video of going, this is why I don't do this, because I am stressed the fuck out, and my kids didn't go to bed till like 10 o'clock at night. So it's
And then it
being
messes up for
really,
everybody.
yeah, everything. And then they're not going to sleep, and it turns into like a cascade effect. But if we can be as intentional as possible with our time, setting our boundaries really clear for ourselves. I don't want to talk to anyone before this time because I know I need my coffee or my Dr. Pepper,
Hmm.
and I need to get my day going. You're going to be more efficient. You're not going to be stressed out. You're not going to be super anxious. You're not going to not sleep the night before because your schedule is not what you're used to. And I have OCD too, so that doesn't help.
Yeah, I think that's part of it also, is that it's not just, like I'm autistic, ADHD, chronic illness. Like I think not,
Hmm.
these come in they all come in threes, don't they?
They do.
So we have, we all have collections of them. And so they build on each other. And then you, of course, also have most of my listeners also have, they're caregivers for someone who is neurodivergent or has a kid with special needs or something like that. So it's a very similar story. Um,
Hmm.
you mentioned, okay, there was something else that you said earlier that I was like, oh my God, I really want to come back to this. And now it's completely spaced, but I'm sure we'll come back to it again. It
I'm
was
sure.
like you were talking scheduling, blah, blah. Damn, it was so important because remember you said all those things at the beginning. Okay, it's
I
fine. I'm
remember.
just gonna go look at my show notes here and my questions that I had, and then was it the 600 businesses? It was, oh yeah. Okay, it was the other question I had. So you were, one of the things that, like in terms of, you said you're crazy, you have the schedule. Do you have things that like you need, it's like you said, coffee. What are some of the things that you do? So let's say you find yourself, you've said yes too many times, you find yourself in this overwhelming space. Do you have like rescue like behaviors, like for me, I have like my own stimming behaviors that I do to kind of like self-soothe myself. Like I have a really fluffy, it's this same type of fluffy blanket, and I like
That's really funny.
burrito myself into it, oh, you got yours too. We've all got our blankets.
Yeah, I know.
So what are some, aside from your blanket, what are some of the other things that you keep around you that like bring you comfort in those moments where you're feeling like you may have overstretched yourself?
So I do always revert back to coffee. And the reason why is coffee calms me down.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it's not a stimulant. So like if I'm super stressed, I'll make myself a cup of coffee, because it's just something about like it just calming me down. It has to be hot coffee. It can't be iced coffee. I know, kind of weird, right? I drink iced
That makes
coffee,
sense.
but the hot coffee is just like this calming, and I'm always cold. So like again, like the blanket calms me down because it keeps me warm. I'm also some people are going to pick up on this now that I said it, right? Especially now that we're in meetings. When I'm stressed out, I pull my ears. So when I'm super stressed out, like I'll sit there and I'll just do this, and like I'll switch ears. And like if you see me going like this in a meeting, it's because I'm stressed out and I'm trying to calm down. So, and
Interesting.
that's probably the biggest indicator. It's my ears. And when I'm like super stressed out and like I'm with my kids, I'll rub their ears to calm them down.
And does it help them too?
Yeah, because they're pressure points. So, and I've done it like for me, it was just kind of, it was like that. I did it as a kid just because it calmed me down.
Yeah.
And it's funny because my boys do it all the time.
I'm
And
like
there's
rubbing my
pressure
ears
points
now.
in your ears.
Excuse me while I rub
Yeah.
my ear.
Yep. So and if I'm around someone who's super stressed out, like, and I became a Reiki practitioner over the course of time. And so, I'll just gently like touch someone and I'll like rub their ears. I'm like, I'm just calming you down. So trying to find the things that calm me down, because I know that touch and pressure points like super calm me down. So those are things where it's funny, because my daughter, who's not diagnosed with ADHD yet, which I'm like, there's no doubt in my mind that she has it. She is a hoarder. She's a hot mess. Her room is like trashed 24/7. And every time you clean it, 2 minutes later, I'm like, what the hell just happened? She's like, what? It's clean. I'm like, she is a collector of all of the fidget toys, like
Mm.
every single type of fidget thing that you can imagine. She has like a backpack filled of them. And she's like, look, I got more at school. And I'm like, great, we have so many. But she got me into the mini fidget spinners. Oh, you give me one of those. They're like the most amazing thing in the world. They're small. You put them between your finger and you can just like sit there in a meeting. I'm like, this thing is fantastic. So that's
One of
like my
my
new
friends
favorite
just
thing.
bought like 7 of those. I don't like, why do you need 7? She's like, I don't know why I needed 7. She has ADHD also. She's like, I don't know why I needed 7. I just needed them. You
Yep.
got it.
Yep. Yep, that would be me. The mini ones, oh, they're amazing. They're so because they're like this big, so you can put them between your hand and you can
Mhm.
sit there. And while I'm sitting here, like on a call, if especially if it's like I'm anxious about it, or like I haven't slept, or like I have other things on my mind, I'm like, it gives me something. But like I feel like I always have stuff around me.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And that's, I'm glad you shared that, because I think that like these are the things like that are so small, and they're actually honestly the kind of silly little things to talk about, where you're like kind of diving into that. But I think those are like the day-to-day things that people don't think about, but that they, for example, you know, when I was younger, and there's definitely, yeah, I wouldn't say I felt this way, but I definitely know that there's people who've been super judgy about someone having a stuffed animal, or about having like, or you're not a kid anymore, especially, when you are in your 19s and your teens and whatnot, and being not a child is so important, right? And I've always had a self-soothing need, but I didn't want to be, not babyish, right? And so I
Right.
had to force myself off of a lot of those things. And I think that, as a child of trauma myself, like the problem becomes then like, how do you deal with your trauma, right? You start, your
Hmm.
self-harm happens because now you don't have anything else.
Fighting. Yep.
Yeah, because you don't have anything else to do. And so I think sharing these little things is so helpful, because it demonstrates like, we are all alike. And you're sitting there with a fidget spinner, and I'm sitting there and messing around with this thing over. Like, we're
Same.
all doing it, even if you can't see it. We've just learned how to do it
Right.
off screen because society designates it as inappropriate. Which, I'm like, don't
Right.
put your fidget spinner in my face. I'm happy with that. You can.
And it's like, there's something to be said for the acceptance of, people that are neurodivergent. I can't even speak English, or, that have any type of difference, which is everybody. Everybody has a
Mhm.
difference. Everybody has a different ability, whether they're going to address it or not. And, but it's more in our face. So it allows the acceptance. Like I remember when I was in school, and I think about this often, there was a kid who was autistic, and I thought he was like the funniest guy. He was so great. He was so sweet. And I remember like kids making fun of him because he was different. And like it would never even occur to me in my brain that it was okay to make fun of someone. And I'd always stick up for him, always have a conversation with him. And, I really started paying attention to like other people. And like, but what stuck out so much was I was in high school. I graduated with 1,000 kids. There were 4,000 kids in my high school. There were so many other kids that were autistic, but it wasn't a thing and it wasn't noted. And, society didn't really accept it because, you were the weird kid.
Yeah.
And I look at society now, and as a mom who has a child who he's not fully diagnosed with autism because he's actually like brilliant. So they won't diagnose him with high functioning autism just yet because the way that the scaling goes, but he is diagnosed with Tourette's and executive functioning and like something else. And I feel like he has so many different things, sensory processing disorder, like all the things, right?
Hmm.
And I look at him and I start to like almost like I cry, like, and the tears are real because as a mom, knowing that he's so much more accepted, I can't even imagine what that parent felt like when it wasn't.
Hmm.
And my heart breaks because I know I'm different and I have a different ability, but I still present myself as being normal. Where like my son doesn't. He has tics and he does all the things and he stymes and he makes noises and he doesn't understand spatial relations with people. And so like I'm always trying to educate people as to like why it's so important to accept kids and accept everybody around us. And so the fact that it's more accepted, it makes me so much happier. But we still have to deal with it all the time. Like I don't know if you saw the video that I posted about the woman that I kind of snapped at
I did
IKEA
not
last
tell me
week.
about it.
So I did a video because I was so angry. And then I posted it like on the moms with kids with Tourette's, because I'm like, I wanted them to know like this happened, but this is how I dealt with it. I I like I have a strong background. Like my family is like, I found out more recently like German and Russian and French. So like I have like this strong anger issue already like, set up, predisposed. And so my first reaction to a lot of things is I want to snap. Like when someone says something to me, I am cocky, I am brash. But with my kids, I want to teach them that we can be cocky and kind at the same time. And instead of being mean to someone else that was mean to us, how about we educate
Yeah.
them? So I was at IKEA. It was me, Jim, and the boys, and we're buying my youngest son a bed. And my youngest son is 2.5, and he's a screamer because his brother has Tourette's. So for him, the only way that he can get attention is
Yeah.
he screams because there's so much attention going on above him.
Hmm.
And so I was in an aisle. Jim was looking for something, and so he wasn't there. I had two carriages, two boys, and there was like this woman on the side of me who was like struggling to put something on a cart by herself. And my boys are making noise, Logan was. He was like shaking and he was humming, and so my youngest was like upset that he was shaking the carriage and that he was humming, so he started screaming. And at the same time, like none of it bothered me. Like that does not bother me. Your kid could be screaming and yelling, and if it's a mom who like has a kid having a meltdown, I'm like, I feel you. Do you need anything? Like that's my
Right.
first response, right? I'm like, I understand. I got 3 kids at home. I'm here for you. Do you need something? And so my general response is to turn to someone and be kind. And because I know what it's like. And this woman behind me, she was struggling. I actually locked eyes with her because I wanted to ask her if, and I swear with the universe around me, my intention was to ask her if she needed help.
Yeah.
Even though my kids were screaming and they were just being jerks, I was going to help this woman who was struggling putting her stuff on her carriage. And she turned around and she locked eyes with me. She's like, will you just shut them up already?
Oh my gosh.
And I took a deep breath because the first thing out of my mouth was like, not what I said, because my natural intention would be like, go fuck yourself. But then I said, don't say that, Jen. So I took a deep breath. Like, when we teach our kids, like, take a deep breath before we say something, be proactive, not reactive. And so instead of being mean, because I don't want my kids to mimic that behavior, I turned and looked at her and I said, my son has Tourette's. Do you want to have a conversation about it? And she looked at me and like she didn't like know what to do. And she just like turned her head super quick. And another person showed up to like help her,
Help
like
her.
someone that was with her. And as she was putting the box on the cart, she dropped it on her hand. And in my head, I was just like, karma is a motherfucker. Like that's what you get. But I didn't say that out loud because I don't want my kids to like, my kids know I believe in karma. But like, it was just so funny because I thought that in my head. And then she just looked at me again and I said, do you want to have a conversation about it? And I said it super calm. I'm like, I'm more than happy to explain to you like why my kids act the way that they do. And she just like got her stuff and like left. And it was funny because I don't think she expected me to like be like, hey, let me educate you, hey,
Yeah.
let's have a conversation. Like if anybody is around me and they don't understand, like let me tell you what this is, let me show you what this is. Like even like the vice principal at my kid's school, he's never worked with a kid with Tourette's. He's like, he's like, honestly, like I've never worked with a kid with Tourette's, so like I'm not sure how, like what do you need my help with, how
Right.
can I be of assistance? He like educate me. And so I want to educate. I could have turned around and I could have been so mean because that was if my kids weren't with me, that's the conversation would have been different. I am that person that someone says something cocky, I say it right back. But I'm just like, be the better person, teach your kids about educating, teach them that if you want to know what's going on, I'm going to show you and explain to you why this is happening and not be super mean to people
Hmm.
because it doesn't do anything if we're mean to each other. I mean, I wanted to be, but
Well, also like it doesn't, I think it sends like the bad, because like I think that one of the, one of the lessons for like it's interesting that you tell this story, because like a story that I've told a couple of times on many podcasts actually is how I became friends with my inner self. And mean inner self for the longest time, is we've all got that, right? We're constantly and there was one day, and I'll tell a shorter version of this story, but I was cutting onions in the kitchen, and the mean voice came, and it's typically, I'd been taught before, just tell it to go away and shut up and you don't want to hear, and blah blah. So I did that. I did that for years to try to like mitigate it, to try to feel better about myself, and it just never worked. And in that moment I said, you know what, I was like, when I say go away, get lost, I don't want to hear your voice, you're stupid, you're wrong, then I'm reacting to violence with violence. And so what the hell is this voice in my head going to do? It's just going to come back with equal violence or more. And it's like, okay, I'm going to try something different. So in my head, I went back to head self and I was like, hey, are you okay? And I started crying. Like I actually started crying, but not from the onions. I was crying from like actual emotion.
right.
And then we started a conversation that it goes on to this, and our relationship is much better now, where it's like when the inner me needs something, she doesn't come at it like she didn't know how to communicate her needs, right? And through therapy and work and blah blah, I was able to like then get a relationship going. But
Right.
these things, that these moments, right? It demonstrates how you respond to things, and it's not just how you respond to the person in the store, it's how you'll even respond to yourself, right? And then that in and of itself damages it creates so much more damage across time, for
Oh,
a single
absolutely.
person, for like, especially for your son, right, who's young, has so many years ahead of him, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that lesson, either he's going to have to fix the bad lesson in therapy in the future, or you can
Right.
teach him the right lesson now.
Right. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of things that he's going to have to fix in therapy because
Of
nobody's
course.
perfect, right? No matter all of the tools that I give him. But it's so important to me that we give them this opportunity, and we kind of present them with the positives and things. Like I'm always looking for a positive reinforcement, always looking for something positive. So being able to just give those resources to my kids, I think is super important. They're still going to know that I'm like feisty and loud and brash, but there's also a time and a place for it. And certain reactions, constitute for that. And this isn't the first time that people have reacted to him in a certain way.
Mhm.
And I've had to be actually a little bit more forceful with a situation when something happened with him a few years ago in Vegas. And it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking for a parent that you have to go through it. And he's mild. I can't even imagine what it would look like if it was worse,
Mhm.
and so it's so important. It's so important. And it really comes down to it. And you said something before, and it like triggered this other thought in my head. I'm like, as I talk to myself all the time in my head, you really made a great point of saying I started having the conversations with myself and making them positive. And I think that's the first step in like getting right with ourselves, right? Is like becoming like listening to that inner voice and having conversations with it, because when we talk about that, like to some people, they're going to be like, wow, they're crazy, they talk to themselves. We talk to ourselves more than anybody else in the entire world, every single day, all of the time. We are asking ourselves questions all of the time, whether we realize it or not. Constant, like we are constantly talking with ourselves. And then someone with ADHD, it's even worse, because we have like a whole board of people that we talk to on a daily basis in our head, because we're like, did we do this, did we do this, are we doing this, are we doing this, who are we talking to? Like, and that's really what it's like, right? It's really like, all of these things that are going on in our heads, because we're playing out situations. If we do this, this is what's going to happen. If we talk
Mhm.
to this person, this is what I got to do. And we're constantly in there having that positive reinforcement in our heads. It's beautiful. Like I don't have negative thoughts in my head all the time. Usually if I have a negative thought, they just come right out, just so I can just get it
Get
out,
it
and then
out.
it doesn't get stuck in there. And so it's once we start listening to ourselves, and I think therapy is amazing. I'm actually starting with a new therapist this week, and I am so like, I'm celebrating it. I'm like, I can't wait. Like I'm starting with a new therapist, and for any other reason other than I just want someone to talk to more. Like I
Mhm.
want to just continue to get the thoughts out of my head. I want to continue to make sure that like I'm always, in a positive headspace, and I love it. And some people are like, well, I don't need therapy. I'm like, everybody needs therapy. Everybody needs a person to talk to, whether it's your best
Absolutely.
friend, a therapist, a mentor, whoever it is. Just get all of the thoughts out of your head, talk to somebody else.
I
So
actually
important.
think it's got to be a therapist or a therapy type person. Like I feel like, so I have several people in my life who just don't do therapy. For
Right.
some of them, they found alternative like methodologies, which I find really interesting, where there's a therapist involved or somebody who has an understanding of how the brain and mind works involved to like
Yep.
help guide it. Right. But the people who say, well, I don't need therapy, I have different ways of dealing with it. It's like, I feel like they don't necessarily know what therapy is. Right. Like,
Right.
because what therapy essentially is because my therapist and I sit and I just brainstorm, I just brainstorm everything on her. I solve most of my own problems. Like she talks maybe,
Oh,
she gets
absolutely.
maybe 4 sentences out like in the whole hour. And I talk the whole time and I'm like, okay. And then I solve. And she like just the other day, she actually said, well, she's like, you kind of just solved your own problem. And I was like, yeah, I know, but I want you to give me your thoughts. And, because I wanted her opinion
Right.
from an outside perspective. And this is a space where I can be extremely vulnerable, right? Where I wouldn't necessarily, like, what if the person that I usually talk to as a sounding board is the person I want to bitch about, in therapy,
Yes.
then it's like,
Yes.
and so that is actually, I find that I'm glad you brought up therapy because I think it's like super important.
It
I
is.
want to divert just a little bit now since I realized we've already talked for, almost 45 minutes and I'm like, shit, I didn't even get a couple of questions I really wanted to get to. So, okay. So I'm moving a lot more also into like, I wanted to talk more about like your business and how you, now you've got like, when I said business one is you've got several. So,
Yes.
I guess my first question is, why do you have so many businesses? Like, because a lot of times, and the reason why I want to ask you this is because one, a lot of the people in my community, in my sphere, they have a lot of businesses, and sometimes it's like a bunch of direct sales businesses or a bunch of other types of businesses, and they do it because they want to diversify. Some people have, some people that works for some people that doesn't work for others, whereas for others it just dilutes it too much. So I'm curious to know, how do you find that because you have a lot of businesses, how do you manage to make sure that each one is moving along? And like, what would you recommend to someone who has multiple businesses, but maybe none of them are doing super well, right? Because now you've had the experience of having a bunch of successful ones.
Yep.
So tell me a little bit about that, because I'm very curious about the difference between a bunch of successful ones and a bunch of non-successful ones.
I definitely think that's super important. So like I have three, we'll say three of them are really successful. And the first one was actually very successful, but I chose to make it more residual
Mm-hmm.
than more so. And I'll explain in a second. So I w- I started my first company was, and not my first company, it was the first company of this group that I have right now, was a t-shirt company. So an inspirational apparel company. I actually started that company to teach myself how to run a successful business.
Mm.
I started it to put myself through a program called Entrepreneurship for All, so E for All. It's all over the country, and I wanted to learn how to be a business owner. So I submitted to the program, and they literally taught me the ins and outs of business, like very quickly. It's an accelerated program, and they gave me mentors, and they opened my eyes up to people and opportunities that I didn't necessarily have, right? So I started this t-shirt company that, like I said, it was very successful. I don't put a lot of energy into it because it sells itself. And so when I first did it, like I was going to like, fairs, on the craft fairs, and selling them all over the place. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like spending 7 days a week. I finally just set up like a print fly, and I just let it sell on its own. But I did it because I was setting myself up for a bigger business. So the biggest business I own, um, I'd say, I mean, yeah, both of the two middle ones are pretty big. So the the biggest business I own is a babysitting company, professional nannies, babysitters. I do have full service babysitters, which means they work directly for me. I'm the only business of its kind in the area. Getting insurance was almost impossible because it doesn't exist. So what it is the babysitters work directly for us, but then I also place them with families as well. So a nannying
Mm-hmm.
agency. So it's really cool because when I first started that business, I was like, I'm going to start this business to be like a date night babysitting, and it's going to be a really good gig, and I'm not expecting it to like grow super big, but like I have like this idea of it growing. Year 3, we're going to start a nannying agency, and then we're really going to start like expanding. And the day that we were opening, literally, I kid you not, the week that we were planning on opening our business, COVID started.
Oh, geez.
I got my LLC at the beginning of February, or the middle of February, and then we had a planned trip to Vegas and California, and I said, when I come home, we're going to launch the company. Like that was planned. Everything was ready. Everything was ready to go. We're going to launch the company the middle of March. And literally the day we came home from our trip, the whole world shut down. It was
Oh
like
my
St.
gosh.
Patrick's Day, right? And so it was like my whole thought process of this business changed. And I was pregnant, and it gave me the opportunity to kind of sit on the couch and just like kind of brainstorm and figure out what to do. It actually taught me to calm down a little bit, reflect in things that I don't normally do. I'm the go, go, go person. I was all over the place, hot mess. So it really helped me to like restructure my thought process. But I gave myself a few months and I decided to relaunch. But my thought process was we're relaunching for frontline workers and people who need nannies in their homes.
That makes sense. Yep.
And right. And so we launched in November of 2020. By the end of 2020, so in the 2 month time frame, I think I had 7 employees. And in that short time frame, we had 7 employees. By the end of 2021, because now like I can't remember, I think I hired and placed over 150. And
Wow.
to date, we're over 500. I stopped counting. Like I
At
literally
some
stopped
point, you
counting.
stop counting. Now, where
I
are
stopped.
you located for anyone who is looking for this service? Where are you
Yeah,
located?
absolutely. So, we're on the south coast of Mass. So our full-time sitters pretty much stem anywhere. It's between me and you, from here to Rhode Island. So we do service Rhode Island. We are all the way out as far as like Newport, as far as like Freetown, Providence, and all the way up to the Cape. So as far even full service,
Mm.
babysitting and nannying, we do events and stuff like that as well. And
Do you go
and
up?
our
How far north do you go in Plymouth? Do you go to Plymouth and then higher?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
um,
we will. And you know, at that point, when we kind of hit the Plymouth line, we start looking for a placement.
got
Unless
it.
the person who is unless I have nannies in that area. I have all my employees are per diem now. I used to have part-time employees, but it's more per diem. I switched the focus more towards placement because
Mm-hmm.
it makes more sense financially for my clients. And that opened the door to my cleaning company, which so we added cleaning services to everything that we were doing. So now I have my residual t-shirt business, and that's doing great. I have my babysitting company that I focused on. And, that was what I really wanted to focus on. But to sidetrack just for a moment, years ago, someone told me, what if you took all of your ideas and you made them into one thing and just really worked really hard on this one thing and not focus on doing all the other things? Even though your brain wants to do a million things, focus on this one fucking thing. And I was like, okay, I'm going to focus on this one thing. So I'm like, I put all of this energy into my babysitting company. And then I'm like, ooh, someone needs this. Ooh, someone needs this. Ooh, someone needs this.
Yeah.
So it literally I got really good at one thing. And so once I got really good at that one thing, then I was like, okay, then I can kind of veer off and do other things and add things. And so as growth started to happen, we had cleaning for our babysitting families. And then it got so big that I actually had to separate it. And when I separated it, I made one post and I had to hire 12 people. And so I'm like, and no more social media posting until we understand how this works. Because it was a huge learning curve because I was not ever expecting to own a cleaning company, like ever. Like it was, if you would have said, hey, out of all of these jobs in the world, would you ever own a cleaning company? I'd be like, absolutely not. And, but no, for no other reason other than it was something that like I didn't deem it necessary. But like I was so busy working, I needed someone to clean my house. And that's literally how it started.
Right. Like,
One
why
of the,
would you have a
yes,
cleaning company if you need so that makes perfect sense. Like,
yeah.
you'll
So
hire
that's
a
how it
cleaning
started.
company.
Yes, that's exactly what it was. And so I had someone who worked for a cleaning company who was a nanny for me, who was like, you know what, like, how about like I'll start doing it. She started doing it. A few other people like started like jumping on board, and we were crossing a handful of them. And we were just like, we just need to start a cleaning company. And then the cleaning company took off on its own and started doing so well that we were just like, okay, this is really cool. We need to kind of work on our structure and try to separate things. And as much as I love being in the business, I love overseeing things. I love starting businesses. Like I love,
Yeah.
and which will kind of lead me into the next step. I love starting businesses, but once it's up and going, I love giving people an opportunity to do something that they really love and really be able to be that person. I can be that person in all my businesses, but I'm not going to be successful. So I had to take someone and replace myself. And like Lainey,
Yeah.
she's the vice president of the cleaning company. She actually has shares in the company. So she is, she does own part of the company. And I knew I had an opportunity and this created a whole nother thing in my head. I'm like, oh, I have this opportunity to be able to give people opportunities who wouldn't necessarily have an opportunity to own a business or
Mm.
have the resources. But what if I gave them an opportunity? So I'm currently in the process. So like if people hear this, they can be like, ooh, I'm actually onboarding someone and additional support to be able to kind of take my place with the babysitting company so I can continue to oversee because that's my baby. And no pun intended. But but to give them the opportunity because I am more at a higher level, so like I oversee, I don't micromanage. I say these are all the things that I want. I talk to my team, we are all on the same page, and I just let them do their thing. And if
Hmm.
there's a problem, then they come back at me and we say, okay, what can I do to give you the resources to be able to make this better? And we work on it from there. And I think by giving people the opportunity who really like have skin in the game, they're going to work harder because it's part of theirs, right?
Absolutely.
So then it led me to the next stage. Well, now that I'm able to kind of do this, I got really good at owning businesses. I got really good at hiring people. I got really good at, you know, understanding it. Now I want to start helping other people. And so I made it this goal to, I started Epic 47, which initially it was, so I'm going to say initially because I know I've already changed my mind. So I just help 47 businesses by 2047. And
Aha.
there, so I was like, this is going to happen, but like, I'm starting 3 more companies this year. So I mean, let's be real, like I'm going to hit the number pretty quick in my head. So I'm like, it's going to be different. But my goal is to help as many people as I can create a business. And so I started becoming a venture builder. So anyone who doesn't know what a venture builder is I, as part of my consulting firm, I actually come in and I hold people's hands and I help them to start a business because it's something I'm really good at. I'm really good at starting businesses. But instead of me giving them money, like capital, it's sweat equity. So I actually will own part of their company and help to start it. And then after a certain period of time, I slowly back away from it. So our contracts will eventually either write me out or buy me out. But it allows me to help them start a business, hold their hand through the whole process. Like, here, look, I know how to do this. Let's do this together. And then I let them go and they do their own thing. And all of them are so different because the businesses are so different, but because my brain is like, I want to do all the things, it allows me to help people doing all the things, but the backbone's the same. Starting a
Hmm.
business and the structure is exactly the same. So if you have something that works really well, keep doing it. But if you notice that like you have all of these things but none of them are doing well, you need to reassess. Go to the business that's doing the best. What are the things that in that business are doing the best? Focus on those and how can you change that. So I don't believe that if you only have one business you're going to be successful. Tony Robbins has so many of them and he's super successful because his model is similar to mine. Find people who really love doing what they do, let them run your company, and you can still own it. But you have to be willing to put the work in to teach people how to do that. So it's not like I'm just going to be like, oh, here you go, here's one of my businesses, good luck. Like I put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into it, kind of like I do with my clients. And
Hmm.
my job as a consultant and a strategist is, if you don't want me to own part of your company but you need help with business, I'm here to also do that. When people come to me, it's typically they've already started a business. Most of my clients have ADHD, shocking, and it's because their head is like, I'm all over the place and I don't know
Yeah.
what to do. And I was like, let's have a conversation, tell me what you do, how can we be more efficient, how can we do all of these things. And so I'm able to come in and really help people understand their business, understand how to be, make it more manageable. If you can't do it, who can we put in place to help you stay
Hmm.
organized? Lainey was the person who helped me get super organized at the beginning. And then, like, obviously, like I gave her another opportunity. So I had to be really good at doing it for myself.
Yeah. Laney's amazing. So by the way, guys, if you need your house cleaned and you happen to be in the South Shore area or any of these spaces that Jen just mentioned, she came to my house. She did like the quick runaround, and she took and check mark. It was like, it was amazing. She just knew exact it, it actually like it gave a sense of comfort, because I've had many people, I've had my house cleaned many, many times over, I mean, not this one, but over the years. And there's people that come to your house where you're like, I don't know if I can trust you. And one person, oh my God, she came to my house. She gave me a quote, and I hadn't had my house cleaned in ages. I remember this so well. Like this is the one I remember so vividly. Oh, so I was gone all day. Like I had a bad feeling about her from the moment I met her, but I was just like, I desperately needed a house cleaner. So she
Mm-hmm.
came. So I was one day, I left the key, where she could get in under the mat. And I came home and nothing in the house had been touched, but she took the money. And I was like, fuck you. I was so
Oh,
mad. Oh my God, I was so mad. I was really, really, really sick back then and drinking like a
yeah,
fucking fish. So I just was kind of like, it was just, that's how I dealt with it. I was like, oh, vodka.
right,
But I was mad. And so, I've had good and bad experiences. So I've learned like what makes you feel
same.
good. And I think the thing that made me feel great was that like Lainey comes in with this checklist and like goes through the checklist, and then she's like, okay, this is your quote. I'm like, this is amazing. I'm like signing right now. It was fabulous. So it's like, it's very streamlined. And what I liked about it was that it just I didn't feel like, I felt like I was carried through the whole process, right? As
Right,
opposed to sometimes I'm like, okay, what do you need me to do? Right. And then
right.
I'm the one pushing. And that, I think that's where it really made a difference. So guys, if you're in the South Shore area, where
Yeah,
should
that
they
makes
go?
me
Where should they
happy.
go?
So they can reach out to me directly. It's Mamas and House Cleaners, where you can look us up on Facebook, on Instagram. We're all over social media. You can contact me directly. I decided not to go with a website just because we got so big so fast that I was like, all right, how can I do this on a steady scale? Because the thing is we got really big really fast, and I felt like we weren't efficient, and to no fault of my own other than I had no idea how to run a company.
Yeah.
So for me, it was we got big really fast, and then I was like, all right, let's pull it back a little bit, and like what can we do to learn? So like every time like a client would like complain like in the past, I'd be like, okay, cool, this is great, this is fantastic, like what can I do? Like I would always ask for opinions, like every time we clean, like
Mm-hmm.
you'll see it, you'll get a checklist, like you'll walk through with her at the end, and if something was missed, awesome, let's get it taken care of. And but we didn't have the checklist, and like that's all like learned behavior,
Right.
right?
You figured it
So
out.
it really taught us like, okay, these are the things that people need. Every person is completely different. What I want and what you want are two completely different things. How can we do something to make it so it's a little bit easier, and keeping that open, like that open door policy, like, okay, cool, what did we not do? How can we make it better? And continuing to do that with service. So that was really important to me because that taught me a lot. That business probably taught me more than any of the other businesses I have.
I love what you just said. I want to reiterate it because I think it's the most important thing. I think lots of important things come out of this conversation, but this one's super important. It's the point where you said when somebody complained and it went wrong, right? You were like, okay, good. Let's sit, talk about it, figure out what was the problem. What can we do to make it better? What systems can we put in place to make sure that not only does this not happen again, but we're putting something in place to make it even better, And
Yes.
I think that the reason why that's so important is because most of the people that most of us in the world, actually, now that I think about it, go through a process where we are so insecure that the feedback we get that's negative, we can't bear to look at it. It makes us angry. We respond
Right.
poorly. We don't, and it has nothing to do with the fact that we're not willing to improve or whatever. It's just our self-esteem and anxiety and whatnot. We bring a whole lifetime of trauma into that moment, right? And in that
Absolutely.
moment, it's not just about the customer complaint, it's about everything else we've brought in. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that what you're saying is so important, that you divorce yourself from the emotions in those moments and really prioritize how can you use this as a learning opportunity, because that is where your business becomes gold, is those moments of
That's it.
mistakes that you make good.
That is, you literally said what I say all of the time. It's separating the two. For me, like I say this to people all the time too. If you want to come and work with me, that's totally fine. You have to know that there's a personal gen and there's a business gen. And
Mm-hmm.
I can shut them off. I can cross them, but I can shut them off. And if you came and worked for me, and I say this to people and they like get terrified. If you're working for me and you're doing a shitty job, I'm gonna figure out what I did wrong to not make sure that it was why it wasn't done right. And then if once I realize it was you and not me, if we decide to separate ways, just to let you know, like the personal gen isn't going to take any of that personal.
Right.
And or whatever, or something happens, or you have a client complaint, I'm not looking at you on a personal level, I'm looking at you on a professional level, and I'm trying, and I can distinguish the two,
Yeah.
and not many people can. But same thing with feedback. I've had clients that are friends, and they're like, oh, I really don't want to say anything because you're my friend. I'm like, like, you're my friend. You
No,
should be the first person to give me feedback.
that, yes,
And
you're my friend.
yes,
Why aren't you
you're
telling
my
me the
friend.
truth?
Yes. So it would be like, well, I just didn't want to hurt your feelings. And I'm like, I have no feelings. Like, I'm just kidding. You're not going to hurt my feelings. Like, when it comes to business, like, I'm going to say, shut the personal friendship off. what can I do to make this better? Because if you're feeling this, then someone who doesn't know me is feeling this, and then I'm not doing my job. And to you, you're still going to be my friend because you feel bad and you want to give me the service. But then the other person is going to be like, well, her company fucking sucks and they're never going to use me again.
Yes.
So save me that, do me a fucking favor, and just like give me feedback. And, I'm super blunt about it, but like, it's so important. Like, just tell me, like, if you came to me and you're like, oh man, they forgot something. Okay, cool. Let's write it down. Let's notate it. Let's make sure it gets taken care of. I'm here for it. Let us go. Like, there are times where like we always ask that the client is there at the end for that one particular reason. If something's forgotten, we can fix it. But like, if for some reason you can't be there and something was forgotten, like, we're going to go back and we're going to fix it. I'm not going to be like, oh, well, I'm sorry. No, we're going to fix the problem. I want to make sure that we're taking care of all of those things. And we're not perfect. We're just human. What I want done and what you want done are two different things. So like the way I'm looking at it and you are so different. So just spare me the sympathy and just give me the feedback, because it's a learning experience. I tell people all the time, like, this is fantastic. You made this suggestion. Now I can do this, this, and this. My company wouldn't be doing as good as it's doing if I didn't get the negative and the positive feedback.
Yes, that's your companies would not be doing as well as they're doing if you did not get both the negative and the positive feedback. Fabulous. Okay, we've actually gone over a whole hour now, but I can't even tell you how much I appreciate your time.
Sorry.
I kept you here. I was about to say, my God, I'm sorry. I kept you for like a full hour. It was only supposed to be 45 minutes. And I'm like,
thank you.
Can you keep talking, Jen? Can you keep talking? You're just so entertaining. And I mean, we get along so well. As we were talking, I was like, this really is like eavesdropping on us, just hanging out like on one of our conversations. Thank you so much. So you've already told us where we can find you, and all of the links are going to be in the show notes. So that on the website, Manessa.com. Guys, go. Actually, what? I totally lost what I was going to say. I was like, guys, go. No, if you're in the South Shore, go there, because I can tell you already, like, having Lainey come to my house is already a weight lifted off me. And if you are someone who is not in the South Shore or just is anywhere in America and you have an idea for a business and you want to get going, Jen is the place to go. Like, she's already built like 3 or 4 successful businesses. She's probably got 10 others in her brain. She has 3 others in her brain, at least right now.
So many.
Just so many,
I love
right?
conversations.
And maybe one of yours can be one of them.
Yes. And I totally cut you off. So
no,
I will apologize for that. But I love conversations. I love talking to people. So like, just because this is what I do for a living, I'm always here for a conversation. So like, there are times where people are like, well, I'm not sure if I want to use your service. I'm like, you don't have to use my service. So you just want to pick my brain for 30 minutes. Let's set up a Zoom call. If you live close enough, let's go have coffee. I am down to have a conversation. If I'm here just as a backboard, that initial conversation, I'm here for it. And, I've had people who don't even know where to start. I'm like, just give me all the information in your head. I'm going to throw some stuff at you. That doesn't mean you have to use me for business. You're not going to hurt my feelings, but just know this is what I'm capable of. This is what I can do. And I'm here for it. But I want to support you wherever you are in the process. And if it's just to have a conversation and have coffee or talk about like something completely different, I'm here for that too.
So that I'm going to tell you right now, guys, everyone who has ever wanted to hire me as a coach, right? But now I don't coach anymore. Go to Jen, because that's actually something we talked about in our very first conversation when you were telling me what you did. Like, my thing is always just tell me everything that's going on in your business. I'll tell you what you need to do next. I won't be the person you necessarily work with, but I can tell you what to do. Now, I don't do that anymore, but I didn't have anybody who, because it's a very beautiful mind, like, that's capable of like pulling all that together. So Jen is your person. Jen, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you guys enjoyed eavesdropping on our conversation.
It was fantastic.